I'm going to talk about UV unwrapping stuff in 3dsmax, why you need to do it, and how to do it. This is an introduction to the Unwrap Uvw modifier. It's going to be very brief, at least as brief as I can make it, and I'm not going to drill into any of the details. I'm just trying to get through it as quickly as possible in the simplest way possible. So, why do you need to do it? We have our character here who's rendered, and we've got a whole bunch of textures on him, and you can see this in the view over here as well. So we've got these V shapes on his chest, and it is rendered using a big texture map, which you can see if I pick it. So let's pick a texture from here, base color. It's a bit black, but I think you can see down here we've got a shape which looks a bit like a breastplate. So Control Alt, middle mouse dragging to zoom in and out. This is just like the viewport, same navigation, middle mouse to drag left and right. Control Alt to drag to zoom in. So you can see this is a cutout of the breastplate, and this is the texture of the breastplate as well behind it. And here are V shapes in the chest. So this whole thing is flattened out into multiple different shapes. We've got leg shape over here, we've got some stuff for the antenna, we've got all the little plates that make up his shoulder armor, and when it's all put together we get this render. So as you can see, this guy is quite complicated, and we're not going to start off with this. We're going to start off with something much simpler. We're going to start off with this simple aeroplane, which we can knot together quite quickly. So this object is symmetrical, has a turbo smooth modifier, and we can use that to our advantage. So rather than trying to, if I press F4, so we're not going to try and unwrap all these tiny little polygons. We're going to unwrap just these very big polygons, and that's going to make our life a lot easier. I'm going to do that using the stack. So I've turned off those in the view, and now I'm going to go down to the modifier stack and go down to the base editable poly, and then here I'm now going to choose Unwrap Uvw from my selection, and you can see we've got all these green lines on it, and these are the edges of texture islands, and we can see that if I open the UV editor page, and what we can see here is a mush of overlapping red polygons. So they are actually all individual, so you can see that polygon is there, that polygon is there, but they're all overlapping each other, which is why we've got this mishmash of stuff. I can view how that's working by clicking on here. So we've got different options, which is these UV texture patterns with these little letters on it and different color squares. You can see all the letters are distorted, and we're seeing multiple versions of the same letters all over the place, and that is because our texture page is a mess. So we need to sort that out. So I'm going to go over to the checkered pattern. If you don't see the checkered pattern when you select it, you just need to bully it a bit. So go over to the texture page and then go back to the checkered pattern, and you'll get something that's sensible. And this is what I like to use the most. So you can see all the squares are uneven in size, some of them are stretched, and let's sort it out. So what I want to do is select all these polygons, and then I can use this button over here to quickly plane a map the selection like that. So you can see these squares are now a bit more even, but I haven't got all of them. Some of them are still left over, and that's because there's a special button here which is useful in some cases. It's called ignore backfacing, so we don't want that on at the moment. So let's try that again. You can select all these polygons like this. You can see the plane faces like that. That's the angle that everything's going to be projected onto. Let's do the quick plane map again. And now we've got a plane shape in our window, which is this projection into that plane. So that's roughly the same, like that. So again, you can see all the wings are stretched, and we've got some unevenness on the fuselage because it's just a flattening of this object. So we can start to split that up, and we can do that by simply selecting individual polygons and then quickly planar mapping it again. So I'm going to select some of this cockpit. I have some tools to help me, so now I've got that bit selected, I can do this grow selection. So I can grow that, shrink it again. So I just want that bit, and I'm going to quickly planar map that. And I can drag it over there. So you have various transform tools. We've got move, rotate, scale, and this kind of general transform tool where I can kind of squash and stretch things, move it and rotate it. If I want to click in here, I can select individual polygons like that. Quite often I'm going to use this select by element button down here. So if I click on this button and I select anything, it'll select the whole UV island like that, which is quite useful. So moving on, I'm going to do the tail. So I've got most of it here. Oops. So control drag to allow me to add polygons to the selection. And I've got everything except that little edge there, so once again I can just do grow selection like that, pressing the grow selection button. And that's all my tail. So let's do another quick planar map. Now there are other ways of doing this. There's pelt mapping, there's various sort of projection tools, but this is really quick and easy to understand, so it's a good place to start. Next thing we're going to look at is the tail. So if I just drag all of that, well, this little strip left over here. So I'm going to grow that, so that's the whole tail section. Now you can see where the plane is facing. So if I quick planar map that, we end up with long stretched stuff like this. So I do actually need to split this into top and bottom sections, and I can do that by going in and very slowly trying to select all this stuff, which does work, but there is an easier way of doing this. So if you go over to edge mode like that, selecting the edge tool, I can just double click on an edge just like you would in the normal max edit poly operations, and you can see that selects the entire edge loop like that. So once I have that entire edge loop selected, I can go over to this panel, and then down here in explode we have this button here which says break. So if I break that, you can see this tiny green line appears on the edge over here, and now we have a green line all the way around our tail section, and that means that we've separated that one big lump into two separate texture islands. And again, if I've got polygons and select by element, I can select the two islands individually, and then what's more, I can quickly planar map it and move away, quickly planar map it and move it over there. So I can do the same on this big wing section over here. So I'm control dragging to select more polygons and grow the selection once more. That's the whole wing, so let's grab that. Again, it's all a bit mushy and smeary, so we're going to double click on an edge. It loops all the way around. You can see it's gone a little bit too far, so I'm going to out click to remove that edge, and over here I'm going to out click to remove that edge. So now we've just got that leading edge section all the way around the wing. So once more, I'm going to go over to here to explode, and we'll just split that down the middle. There's the green line, which means that those polygons are separate UV islands. So once more, I can go back to polygons. Now I've got select by element selected, and I can just separate these guys. So drag that up there, planar map, drag this over here, and I'll quickly planar map. So now we've got everything neatly divided. But you can see there's still a problem, and we've got little squares here, big squares here, got something vaguely square shaped here, but over here it's a rectangle. You can see that. So that means that those texture coordinates down here are stretched. So let's go and fix all this first. So let's try and even out the size of all these squares. So it's a bit of a mess here, so we're going to use the Arrange Elements panel. So if I just click on some of this, so this says pack together, so what that's going to do is just pack everything together and make it the same size. But you can see it's all outside of this square, and that square there is our texture. So anything out here is going to do strange things, unless you know what you're doing. So we want ideally everything to sit inside that texture page. So we can do that by packing and normalizing at the same time. So let's click on this button. So that's normalized everything now into UV space, 0 over here to 1 by 1 over here. So in fact, if I click on vertex, you can actually see the particular UV coordinates of each vertex that I selected. So let's go back. But you can see you've still got these stretch marks down here. So let's fix that. So what we now need to do is what's called a relax operation, and that's going to just even out all the UV coordinates on this fuselage. So over here we have reshape elements. I'm going to use this button, relax custom. So click on that, drag down to the cogwheel, and we've got relax by polygon angles. If you're an older version of Max, it usually goes to edge angles, but by polygon angles is actually the best. So I'm going to just click on Start Relax, and it will just even out all these polygons like that. And when I stop the operation, you can see this updates, and you can see now we've got a neat set of all evenly sized squares all across our fuselage shape. So I can do that for everything all at once. If I don't have any polygons selected, I'll just do everything, and you can see now it's stabilized. So when I click on Start Relax, nothing happens. Sometimes it doesn't stabilize. So if it doesn't stabilize, if I can get it to collapse somehow. So if I start Relax just on this stuff. Alright, can you see how that's twirling? That means the algorithm isn't stabilizing, so it's just going to carry on doing that forever. So stop Relax. So if it does do that, then it's probably best that you planar map it first. That'll just even everything out. And then you relax. And you can see that's now stable, it's not twirling or doing anything weird. Okay, so we have now all our UV coordinates are stable, they're all neatly unwrapped. Things are still a bit uneven because I've messed around, so let's just pack it once more using this pack normalize button. Everything goes on the same texture page, but you can see there's some quite big gaps, so we can reduce the padding. Let's turn that off there so you can see better what's going on. I can even let it rotate, and that will try and pack it a bit better. So that's super efficient. We've got this big space over here, but we're going to fill that with stuff in a bit. So we've got half our plane untextured, and we can leave it like that. So if I go up now into the stack, you can see what's happening here. So I'm going to add, above the symmetry modifier, I'm going to add another Unwrap Uvw. Let's see what that's doing. So I'm going to open that. And I'm going to choose this texture UV pattern. So you can see everything is actually nicely textured, everything's slightly even. But if you look at this text here, you can see it's back to front. And that's because our UV coordinates are mirrored. So that may be okay if you don't have text, but if you do have text, and given this is a plane, I think I probably do want text, then you're going to need to fix it. So once again, we can select some polygons and do stuff with it. So I'm going to turn off ignore back facing. I'm going to select all of these mirror polygons like this. Try and get that neatly. So you can see I've just missed a few here, so let's just turn that off. So I think I've got everything. So I'm just going to the front and the back view to do this in orthographic mode, just so I can check. See, there's a couple there. So once again, Alt drag to remove polygons from the selection. So that's should be even. Just so you know, if you do have some row polygons, if it's a complex object, that's easier to miss things out. So once you've got all that selected, if you just drag, you see how this is stretching, that means that I've got some row polygons selected, so I need to make sure that I Alt deselect those. And now when I drag, you can see nothing smearing. So with this stuff selected, I can now press this button up here, which means mirror, and that flips everything over. And now when I go back to my checkered pattern, you can see that my text is now reading sensibly on each side. So the last thing to do is just to pack that all into the same texture page, because like I said, this is off the edge of the texture and it's going to do weird things. So down here we're once more going to go into arrange elements, and I'm going to pack it all. Again, we've got some big gaps, so I'm going to drop that down to 0.02 and pack it again. And that's a much more sensible layout. And that's kind of it. So that's how to simply unwrap a plane. You can see there's not very many UV islands in here, so here's kind of a simple case. Later I might do pelt mapping in a different video and drill into some of these features a bit more in detail. And that's just going to help you do things more quickly. But fundamentally, you should be able to do most objects like this quite quickly. So just a combination of selecting polygons, turning on and off this ignore back facing button, and then using the quick planar map. To get out a gel free card, you can go to edges, double click on an edge to select a loop, and then over here we have our break button. Once you've got everything neatly separated into islands, then you click on your pack normalize button, and you can relax everything into even shapes by using relax custom over here, the drilling down, and choosing start relax from here, so that will just run a number of iterations and you can watch things and make sure that they stabilize nicely. And there you have it. Right, that was a bit longer than I thought, so thanks for sticking it out. I hope you found it useful, and I'll speak to you again soon.